No one wanted the Apache girl in shackles until the outlaw chief cut her chains. Dust Rock, Arizona Territory, spring of 1887. The sun scorched the square of Dust Rock like a brand pressed to skin. Sand curled through the air, catching in the mouths of onlookers, silent and waiting. At the center of the commotion stood a wooden platform, and on it, bound at the wrists with hemp rope and rusted manacles, stood a young Apache woman with fire in her spine and dust in her hair. Luna White Feather. She held a baby tight against her chest, wrapped in the tattered remains of a mother's shawl. The child didn't cry. It only breathed, soft and shallow, as if it too had learned silence was safer. A man in a bowler hat leaned in close to his companion. "Damn shame," he muttered. "Would have fetched more without the kid. She's Indian, that's curse enough." Murmurs slithered through the crowd. Eyes narrowed, jaws clenched. A few came to gawk, fewer came to bid. Luna didn't look at them. Not the sheriff chewing tobacco in the shade. Not the woman shielding her eyes with a lace fan. Not the saloon men smirking from behind bottles. She looked only at the dirt below her bare feet and held the child tighter. The auctioneer slapped the wooden post with his crop. Lot 16. Female Apache origin, early 20s, speaks English, claims midwife skills, quiet disposition, no known violence. No hands rose. She knows desert herbs, how to stop bleeding, how to birth a baby in a storm. He jabbed a thumb toward the infant. "This one ain't hers, just her dead sister's. You can drop it at the orphan train if you don't want the burden." Still nothing. 50 cents, he barked. "Hell, she'll haul water, wash linens, mend cuts. Someone out here's got a need for that." A man stepped forward, squinting at her with disgust. "Too skinny, looks sick." 40 cents then, come on. Marshall wants her off the books by sundown. The crowd remained still. 30, 20. Luna stood motionless, the heat burning into her shoulders. The child stirred. She shifted slightly, casting her shadow over its face. The auctioneer's voice dropped. 15 cents. For both. Still no hand lifted. She remembered the screams, the flames, the last look in her sister's eyes before they took her. The infant shoved into her arms. The silence that followed. She remembered all of it, and yet she did not bow. If this was her end, it would be with her head high. She kissed the baby's forehead, just once. A whisper of breath. A promise, not of safety, but remembrance. No tears. Only silence. And still, no one came forward. The wind shifted. It came in sudden hot gusts from the south, swirling grit across the square and stinging the eyes of those who had lingered too long under the desert. Sunday hats were pulled down, scarves drawn up. Even the horses grew restless, hooves clacking against the dry, splintered boards of the hitching posts. Then someone murmured, "Rider, coming in." All heads turned. Out from the shimmering haze of the trail rode a man alone, a tall figure atop a black stallion streaked with sweat and sand. He wore a long duster, the color of worn charcoal, and a broad-brimmed hat pulled low. A red bandana covered the lower half of his face, but it was the way he rode, straight-backed, utterly unhurried, that made people shift nervously. He moved like he feared nothing. "That him?" a ranch hand whispered to the man beside him. "Could be. I thought he was just a story." No story ever walked like that. The rider pulled his horse to a slow stop just outside the auction platform. Silence swallowed the square. He dismounted without a word. The boots that hit the earth were dust-caked and heavy, like they had traveled from another world. The crowd instinctively stepped back, parting around him like wheat before a scythe. Even the sheriff straightened and placed a cautious hand on his holster, though he did not draw. The man reached up and pulled down his bandana. Sharp cheekbones, skin sun-darkened, a jaw rough with days-old stubble, a long scar cut down from his left eye to the base of his cheek, pale against the tanned flesh. And those eyes, ice-cold, steel-sharp, framed by lashes too dark and thick for someone so feared. "Silas Grayson," someone gasped. "Red Hawk." The name dropped like a stone in a still pond. Silas, Red Hawk, Grayson, the outlaw chief, the desert ghost. The man wanted in 3 territories and hunted in 2. Word was he had Apache blood in him, though no one dared ask to confirm. Some said he was born of a soldier and a medicine woman. Others claimed he had no parents, just clawed up from the earth the same year the cavalry burned Geronimo's camp. Either way, he was legend. And legend had come to Dust Rock. Red Hawk didn't look at the crowd. He didn't look at the auctioneer either. His gaze was fixed solely on Luna. She had not moved. But when she looked up, truly looked up, it was into his eyes that her own locked. Something flickered behind her stare. Recognition? No. Something older, like remembering a name you had never spoken but somehow always known. Without permission, Red Hawk stepped onto the platform. "Hey now," the auctioneer stammered, voice brittle. "This here's a formal sale. You want to make an offer, you wait your turn." Red Hawk reached inside his coat. Hands flew to weapons. Half the men flinched. But he pulled out only a knife. The blade glinted, polished and curved, like it had been carved from moonlight itself. It was not the weapon that made people nervous. It was the way he held it. Not threatening, certain. He stepped to Luna. She tensed, but did not step back. With one swift motion, Red Hawk sliced clean through the rusted chain that linked her wrist cuffs. The links clattered to the platform like broken teeth. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "What the hell are you doing?" the auctioneer barked. "You gonna pay for her, Outlaw?" Red Hawk turned to the crowd. His voice was low, but it carried. "She is not for sale." Murmurs erupted. The sheriff stepped forward. "Silas, you can't." "She is not property," Red Hawk said louder. "She is not a thing to be priced. She is not yours to buy." His hand found Luna's, still bound by iron cuffs but now disconnected from each other. He held it up for all to see. "This woman is not a slave," he said. "Not anymore." He looked down at her, voice softening. "You are free." The night swallowed them whole. They rode hard under a moonless sky, the horses' hooves pounding against packed earth, kicking up dust that clung to Luna's skin and settled in her throat. Red Hawk did not speak. He rode ahead, silent as the stars above, his silhouette barely discernible from the landscape. Luna held the child close to her chest, every jolt of the saddle making her arms ache. No one followed, or if they did not catch them. By the time the eastern sky began to bleed pale orange, they had reached the foot of the hills. Hidden behind a curtain of brush and rock, barely visible to the untrained eye, was a narrow passage that led to a small hollow nestled deep in the canyon. There, Red Hawk dismounted and offered her his hand. Luna hesitated. Not because she feared him, but because no one had offered her anything in so long that the gesture felt foreign. She took it. Inside the hollow was a rough camp. Not the chaotic sprawl of bandits or outlaws, but something quieter, more deliberate. Tents fashioned from stitched canvas and hides, cooking pots simmering over low fires, people moving with purpose, not panic. They watched her, all of them. Men and women, white, black, native, faces marked by scars, soot, and silence. Some limped, others bore signs of old battles, missing fingers, cloudy eyes, burned skin. Survivors, and all of them looked at her like she was a question they had no interest in answering. Red Hawk said nothing as he led her toward a low tent near the back. "Rest here," he said. Then he turned and left. She sat. The child still clutched to her, heart pounding like it would never settle again. That night, the fever started. The baby whimpered softly, then cried, a weak, rasping sound that rose like smoke into the cold night air. Luna touched the child's brow and found it burning. Panic clawed at her chest. She knew this fever, had seen it take her sister's second child in a single night. She needed herbs, cooling ones, and water that had not been left to sit in a rusty canteen. She pushed out of the tent, holding the baby close, and stumbled toward the fire where a few of the others' Saturday conversations fell silent. One of the women, older, with a faded shawl, raised an eyebrow. "Something wrong with it?" she asked flatly. "He's burning," Luna said, her voice dry. "I need willow bark, yarrow, if you have it." The woman stared at her. "You think we got medicine for your kind?" Luna stepped forward. "You have it," she said quietly. I saw the bundles hanging from your drying line." The woman blinked. One of the men, broad-shouldered and missing an ear, stood up. "Red Hawk brought you. That does not mean we trust you." "I do not need trust," Luna said. "Just bark." He grunted, but the older woman handed her a bundle. Back in the tent, Luna crushed the dried plants with a rock and chewed some herself, moistening them with spit before rubbing them gently along the baby's gums and chest. She cooled his body with cloth and whispered old words her mother used to sing, not for medicine, but for strength. By dawn, the fever broke. The child slept, soft and peaceful, his breath no longer rasping. Outside she heard hushed voices, no longer sharp with suspicion, but tinged with curiosity. The next day, no one offered smiles, but no one looked at her with hate either. She helped mend a torn tent flap, carried water, sat beneath a mesquite tree, grinding herbs she had salvaged from the edge of camp. She spoke little, but her hands stayed busy. The people began to watch, not with disdain, but with that wary respect reserved for those who survive storms. Red Hawk did not speak to her, but he watched. From the shadows, from the ridge above the canyon, from the fire circle where he rarely stayed long, always watching, measuring. On the third night, she returned to her tent to find a small cloth folded neatly outside the flap. It was soft, too soft for any of the rough material used in camp, and held inside was a bundle of lavender, pine needles, and desert sage. A healing cloth. Pressed between the folds was a flint striker, and a single line carved into a strip of leather. "You are not alone." Luna stared at it for a long time. No one came, no one claimed it. But she knew who it was from, and she knew what it meant. He was not commanding her. He was not expecting thanks. He was not even asking her to stay. He was offering the one thing no one had since her world burned. A choice. Smoke curled upward into the night, painting the stars in soft, flickering hues. The fire crackled at the center of camp, casting long shadows along the canyon walls. It was the only warmth in the cold that had settled over them, not just from the desert air, but from something quieter, heavier. News traveled fast in the territory, faster than trains, faster than bullets. By the fourth evening since Luna's arrival, rumors had reached even the farthest outlaw corners. Red Hawk stole an Apache girl from Dust Rock. No, he paid in blood. They say she's a witch, brings bad luck. Armies sending men, not just bounty hunters this time. The whispers rustled through the camp like dry leaves. Some spat when Luna passed. Others just stared too long. The baby slept through it all, fever gone, but his presence still a burden to some. Red Hawk heard the talk. He didn't silence it. Instead, he kept to himself, sharpening knives, repairing his saddle, speaking only when needed. But tension thickened. Then came the betrayal. It happened quietly, as most betrayals do. A signal fire on the ridge, 3 quick flashes, sent by Carrick, a deserter from a railroad gang. He had never liked Luna. Too much Apache blood, too many soft words. He told another man, one who owed him a favor, that he'd trade her location for a clean record and bounty cut. Red Hawk knew before the flames died down. He found Carrick at the water barrels, cleaning his boots like nothing had happened. Red Hawk walked up and tossed a tin badge at his feet. Carrick flinched. "How long ago?" Red Hawk asked. Carrick swallowed. "Just a message. No one saw me." "Wrong," Red Hawk said. "I saw you." The camp held its breath. Hands drifted toward weapons. But Red Hawk didn't draw. In do now store. He just stared, like a storm eyeing a rotted roof. "You want safety and betrayal?" he asked. "Fine." He turned to the others. "Let him go." Carrick blinked. You're not going to kill me?" "No," Red Hawk said flatly. "If he wants to live like a dog, let him crawl under the army's boot and beg. The world will deal with him better than I could." Carrick fled that night, boots uneven, eyes wide. Later, by the fire's edge, Luna sat beside Red Hawk as he cleaned his rifle. She watched him in silence, then asked, "Why didn't you kill him?" He didn't look up. "Because killing is easy." She waited. "Forgiveness, letting someone live with what they did, that's harder." You think I choose easy over right? Luna stared into the fire. I do not know what's right anymore. He glanced at her, then away. You will. The answer lingered like smoke. But the night didn't wait. Just after moonrise, the sound came, distant at first, like thunder over hard earth, then hooves, shouting, gunfire. The camp erupted. Men scrambled. Women screamed. Dogs fled. Lanterns fell. Fire leapt up the canyon wall. From above, soldiers and bounty hunters rained lead and hate down into the hollow. Luna threw herself over the baby as bullets tore through canvas. Someone screamed to run, another yelled for cover. Red Hawk grabbed his rifle, returned fire, then turned to her. Go, canyon path, north wall. She nodded, grabbed the child, and ran low, heart pounding louder than the gunfire. At the trail's edge, Jonas, yes, Jonas, was down, his thigh soaked in red, hands trembling. She dropped beside him. Hold still. Leave me, he gasped. I will not. Under firelight and smoke, she tore her shawl into strips, bound the wound, pressed hard to slow the bleeding. Red Hawk fought his way to them. We move now. Luna lifted Jonas with one arm, the child in the other. Together, they vanished into the canyon's shadow, as the camp behind them burned like a funeral pyre. The cave was shallow but dry, tucked between two stone ridges like a secret kept by the mountain. Luna sat near the entrance, the baby curled against her chest, wrapped in what was left of her shawl. Beside her, Red Hawk knelt over a small flame he'd coaxed from damp wood in patience. The fire barely lit the stone walls, flickering orange against the cold breath of night. Outside, the desert wind howled, but in this hollow carved by storms, a silence hung heavy. Exhaustion, yes, but something gentler too, a fragile peace. Their escape had cost them more than either would say. They had climbed through gullies, down ravines too steep for horses. They'd left the wounded behind, buried the dead in shallow earth. They had barely spoken since. Now they shared a battered canteen, passed without words, shared what little jerky remained, shared breath. Luna broke the silence. My father was a silversmith, she said quietly. He carved bracelets for trade. My mother grew mesquite and aloe. They paid taxes, followed rules, trusted papers. Red Hawk didn't interrupt. When the soldiers came, they said we were on white land, said the treaty had changed. My father showed them a document, signed, stamped. She stared into the fire. They burned it. Her lips tightened. My mother screamed when they took my sister, so they hit her. She died with my sister's name in her mouth. Red Hawk's hands stilled. They said we'd be taken east, to a mission. Safer, they claimed. But they sold my sister to a man who wanted house girls, sold my brother to a farmer in Texas. I never saw them again. He asked, and you? I was useful. I spoke English. I was quiet. He nodded. Once. I waited for help, she whispered. Waited for the good men. The ones who looked away, who said, later, they were sorry. But none came. Silence stretched. Then Red Hawk said, my father was white, Army corporal, tall, quick to anger. My mother was Apache, taken during a raid, but she lived. When he saw she wouldn't break, he married her. At least, he said he did. Luna looked at him, but his eyes stayed on the flames. Neither side wanted me. Whites called me savage. Apache called me tainted. I grew up in between, fighting both, belonging nowhere. He smiled without warmth. I got good at surviving. She studied the firelight on his jaw, the scar down his cheek. All the stories of him, slitting throats, burning barns, stealing cattle, seemed far away. Here, he looked like a man who had run out of places to hide. You never told anyone this? She asked. He shook his head. Why me? Because you listened. She nodded slowly. When the baby finally slept, she stepped outside to stretch. The moon had risen, casting silver over the rocks. She walked a few paces from the cave toward a patch of mesquite by the ledge. She knelt to gather a sprig. Then came the pain, white-hot above her ankle. She gasped and staggered back. The snake, Diamondback, thick and angry, was already gone. "Red Hawk," she cried. He was there in seconds, catching her as she fell. "What happened?" "Snake," she breathed. "Bit me. I didn't see." He didn't hesitate. He pulled off her boot, sliced her trouser leg clean above the bite. 2 puncture wounds already swelling. "Stay awake," he said. She nodded, jaw tight. He leaned down, pressed his mouth to her skin. She felt the sharp pull, then the sound of him spitting to the dirt. Again. And again. His hands shook slightly. He tied the leg tight with a strip of his own shirt, then lifted her in his arms and carried her back to the cave. She was sweating now, breathing shallow. He laid her beside the fire, placing the baby near her chest. "I'll watch," he said softly. "Don't leave. Never." He sat beside her through the night, back to the stone, rifle across his lap. She drifted in and out of sleep, pain and heat coursing her limbs. At one point, she opened her eyes and found him watching her. He wasn't fierce then. He wasn't legend. He was just a man, worried, worn, afraid. And she saw him for the first time, not as Red Hawk, but simply Silas. He reached out, hesitated, then rested his hand gently over hers. When the cold crept in, he lay beside her, arms around her in silence, holding her, protecting her, and shaking, ever so slightly, in the dark. The sun was high when they saw the river, wide, sluggish, and glinting like hammered glass. It marked the final line between one life and another. On the far side lay Mexico, and somewhere beyond that, a community of mixed heritage Apache who had long since fled the wars and the broken treaties of the North. Red Hawk said they would find shelter there, a place where no one cared who your father was, or what your blood cost. But freedom was never quiet in its arrival. As they crested the final ridge, Luna felt it. The stillness. Too quiet. No bird song, no breeze. Just breath. Just tension. Then the crack of a rifle split the air. The bullet struck Red Hawk in the thigh, sending him to one knee with a grunt. The baby let out a startled wail. Luna dropped low beside him as dust and rock exploded around them. "Ambush!" Red Hawk hissed, dragging her behind a boulder. Shapes moved among the scrub, men in coats and dust-covered hats, rifles raised, faces hidden beneath bandanas. Boone's men, and behind them, the glint of army issue. Uniforms without mercy. Red Hawk gritted his teeth. Blood soaked through the leg of his pants, thick and fast. "Stay down," he said. "You are bleeding," Luna replied, already reaching for the satchel of herbs. "I said stay down." She ignored him. Bullets chipped stone inches above her head as she tore strips from her underskirt, ground leaves with the heel of her hand, pressed them to the wound. He winced, but did not stop her. "They are everywhere," he muttered. "They knew we were coming." Luna glanced toward the river. It shimmered, impossibly far. He gripped her wrist. "You have to run. Take the boy. Cross over. Find them." "No." His eyes narrowed. "Do not argue with me now." "I am not," she said, voice steady. "I am refusing." He stared at her. "You saved me when no one else would," she said. "You gave me a choice. I choose to stay." Another shot rang out, sending dust into her eyes. "You will die here," he said. "Then I die beside the only man who made me feel human again." His jaw tightened. "Luna." She pulled the rifle from behind his back, checked the chamber, only 2 bullets, and ducked low. He watched her, disbelief shadowing his pain. Then she smiled. "I have good aim, just not much practice." "Let's fix that," he said grimly. The first man to round the rocks wore a wide grin. He had expected prey. He got a bullet to the neck. Luna fired without blinking. Her hands shook afterward, but her eyes did not. The second came from the left. Red Hawk brought him down with a knife thrown straight through the gut. Another figure moved beyond the bushes, too far for a clean shot. Luna stood slowly, exposed, raised the rifle again. Her breath caught. Her finger hesitated. Red Hawk called her name. She fired. The man fell. Silence returned, for a moment. They did not stop to count the dead. More would come, always more. But for now, They were alive. Red Hawk pulled himself upright, leaning on her shoulder. She braced his weight, her legs straining, her heart pounding with something that felt both like fear and certainty. They limped together toward the river, their shadows stretching long behind them. When they reached the water's edge, Luna turned back once, just for a second. The hills behind them were burning, smoke rose like a funeral song, but she did not cry. Because for the first time in her life, she had fought for something more than survival. She had fought for him, and in his silence, in the way his hand still gripped hers even as pain took his voice, she knew he would have done the same. The river washed away the blood, but not the weight. They had crossed under fire, slipping through reeds and shadows while the last of Boone's men fell behind them like ghosts in tall grass. Boone himself had taken a bullet through the chest, one of Red Hawk's final shots before his leg gave out beneath him. The soldiers had scattered after that, not in retreat, but in confusion. No one wanted to chase phantoms into foreign soil under moonlight. No bounty was worth dying in silence. By morning, it was over. Not with cheers, no victory cries, just silence and smoke curling where tents used to be. The outlaw camp was gone, splintered, scattered like seeds thrown to wind, some dead, some captured. The rest vanished into the borderlands where no one asked who you were if you could swing a pick or hold a shovel. The rebellion Red Hawk had led ended not in surrender, but in cost. It had not been defeated, it had been bled dry. And still, Luna stayed. She didn't flee south with the others, didn't vanish into the folds of the world, like a story no one dared tell again. Instead, she stayed by his side, guiding him upriver, one staggering step at a time, until they found it. A crooked little cabin, a mile past the waterline. Abandoned, sagging, but dry. She laid him down on a straw mattress that smelled of pine sap and old fire. Then, the real battle began. For 3 days Red Hawk drifted between breath and burn. Fever rolled through him like a tide that wouldn't quit. Luna moved like a spirit through the cabin, changing dressings, crushing herbs with the butt of a rifle, soaking cloths in river water. When his skin went hot, she sang softly, the old Apache lullabies of her childhood, letting her voice fill the cracks the pain left behind. He never asked her to. She never told him why. She just did it. Because sometimes love isn't spoken, it's lived. On the 4th night, the fever broke. The baby, now stronger and calm, slept in a makeshift cradle she had shaped from driftwood and soft blankets. Outside, the trees whispered, and the wind moved through them like a mother humming to herself. Inside, the fire crackled low, casting long golden lines across Red Hawk's jaw and cheeks. Luna sat beside his bed, a cool cloth in hand, wiping sweat from his brow. When his eyes opened, truly opened, for the first time in days, she smiled. "You are awake," she said gently. He blinked, then nodded with the weight of someone returning from far away. "You should eat," she offered. A faint smirk curled his lip. "Only if you made it." "I did," she said. "It is terrible." He laughed. Just once. A dry, rasping sound, but it was enough. She studied him in the firelight, the sharp edges of his face, the scar that crossed his cheek like a brand, the pain etched around his eyes, still deep but quieter now. He tried to sit up, wincing, and she reached to steady him without thinking. Then, softly, "If you could go back to the beginning, to Dustrock, would you have bought me?" His brow furrowed. He looked at her, unsure. "Would you?" she repeated, holding his gaze. Red Hawk's voice was hoarse but certain. "No." She nodded, absorbing the truth, trying not to let it sting. But then he added, "I would have waited." Her eyes flickered. "Waited? For you to step off that platform on your own," he said. "To walk to me, not because you were mine, but because you chose to be." Silence. Then Luna leaned in, slow, steady. Her lips brushed his, not from debt, not from rescue, but because in that moment she was no longer the girl in chains. She kissed him because he had made her believe in freedom again. And when he kissed her back, tender, slow, it was not as a savior. It was as a man who had finally been seen. The border faded behind them, not a line in the sand, but a shadow left in memory. Red Hawk rode ahead, his silhouette carved against the early morning mist. Luna followed close, the baby asleep and swaddled tight against her back, his breath warm between her shoulder blades. The trail curved through valleys untouched by boots or bullets, where the river met the mountain in a quiet, sacred hush. No maps claimed this land. No laws bound it. Only the wind, and the sky, and the firelight they would build with their own hands. They rode until the sun reached high, then dismounted by a bend in the river where cottonwoods danced above the banks. The water shimmered blue and gold, clear enough to drink from, deep enough to begin again. Red Hawk looked at the space around them. The stone, the trees, the earth soft with promise. "This is where it starts," he said. They built slow. One tent, then another. A smoke pit, a fire ring, a place for the horses. Word spread like the wind that there was land without masters, fire without chains, and men who judged not by blood, but by how you shared your bread. One by one, they came. An old black soldier who had fled the war with a wound in his side and sorrow in his eyes. A Mexican widow with 2 children, and stories of escape